getting started with my dancing. 1 minute, I'll be back in a jiffy.
Hi Posty, what have you got for me today?
I've no idea, but you get a lot of them, that's for sure.
I certainly do, and I've no idea who these parcels are from. Oh well, thanks. Bye for now.
Bye.
Oh, children, look, I've got a package. I have absolutely no idea what this is because I've definitely not ordered anything and, well, I don't think it's from the postman. Should we see what it is? Oh, I love it when the postman comes because I always get something really nice. Let's open it up. Oh, children, I don't know if you can quite see inside. Look at this. It looks fabulous. I mean, who doesn't like a little bit of pink sparkle? Oh, my word. Can you tell what it is, children? This is a hat. I mean, not just any old hat. I don't think you'd wear this out in the rain. It's far too delicate. Maybe for a special occasion. Should I put it on? Oh, wow! I look like a flamingo! Oh, that is absolutely fabulous. I don't know if it's more fabulous or funny, but either way, I love it. It looks like I'm a very glamorous chicken. Oh, it's like a fancy version of the chicken hat, isn't it? Where is the chicken hat? Oh, it's over here. Hang on. Look at this. So here is the normal chicken hat, which I did have a laugh at. And now I've got like a fancier, fluffier, pink, sparkly version. Oh, isn't it super? Oh, I feel like I could be on stage with this, don't you think? Oh, where's it come from? There's nothing in the envelope to say who sent it. I tell you what, I do keep getting some strange things through the post, don't I? But how lovely someone has thought of me and bought this hat for me. But I have no idea who it is. Whoever you are, if you're watching, thank you very much. It really brings a nice giggle to the party classroom. Super! Well, I think we can start dancing again now. And then, children, we can start our new topic, learning all about decimals. Shall we have a little 30-second dance before we do the decimals? Here we go. Children, that certainly was a lively way to start our lesson today, wasn't it? Can you see Mr. Cuddles behind me? He's looking very dapper in our pink flamingo / chicken hat, isn't he? So I'm Miss Charlotte and welcome to the party classroom. Today we are going to have a bit of an introduction, learning about decimals. Now, children, you will have seen something like this at school before, won't you? Thousands, hundreds, tens and ones. Some schools call this units, but I'm going to call them ones today. So thousands, hundreds, tens and ones. So you know, children, straight away that if I were to write this number, if I put a 1 there, a 3 there, a 4 and a 2, I have written 1,342. We know that because we are confident knowing about place value and the different columns for numbers. So I've got 2 ones in this column. I've got 4 tens in this column. So that means that 4 represents a 40. I have 3 in this column, which is 3 in the hundreds, which means 300. And then here I have a 1 in the thousands column, which represents 1,342. Amazing. But children, did you know that there are actually more numbers that you could add to this? You might know you can get some really big numbers that would come all the way up here, and my whiteboard would have to go off the page, wouldn't it? Because we could go into big numbers like millions and billions. But there are also some smaller numbers, smaller than our ones. Did you know that? So we are today, just as an introduction, I'm going to talk to you about a number that is smaller than 1. Can you see I've put this little dot here, haven't I? It looks a little bit like a full stop. But we don't call it a full stop in maths. That's what we would call it in English. In maths, we call this a decimal point. And I've got my thousands, hundreds, tens and ones. And then I can have another number here. And I'm going to write it like this. And that stands for tenths. I'm just going to write that out here so you can see the spelling of it. Oh, that's a funny looking S, isn't it? Oh, I best do that again. That looks a little bit wobbly. That was more like a snake. There we go. Tenths. It is not in the tens column. It is not a 10. It is a tenths. You see this little ths at the end? It sounds a little bit funny when you say it. Can you say it for me? Tenths. Can you say it a little bit louder? Be more confident. Tenths. Okay, good try. Well done. So being able to say this makes it a lot easier so you don't muddle it up with the tens. So children, let's now think about what on earth a tenth is. You can see that I have drawn a number line here. It's a nice easy peasy number line from 0 to 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have numbers here in the ones column. 1, 2, 3, 4. But did you know that in between each number, we have got something called tenths, just like what we were talking about. And it's a little bit like if you look on a ruler, you have things called millimeters, and it's very similar to that. So you kind of have to imagine that you're looking at a normal number line, and in a way you zoom in, maybe with your magnifying glass or something, and you can see lots of smaller numbers which make up a bigger number. And those little numbers we call tenths. Let's have a little close-up. Shall we zoom in? I've now zoomed in between my 0 and my 1. So we have got all these little red lines and they represent the tenths. So let's see how many there are of them between 0 and 1. I think you probably can guess by the name of them, tenths. But shall we check anyway? Are you ready to count with me? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did you think 10? Because it was obvious, wasn't it, that there are 10 in tenths. Can you see the last one? I've kind of drawn it just as a little dot almost, because you must remember to go all the way to the whole number, which is 1, in order to do this correctly, which means we have got 10 tenths to make up a whole number. And when we were counting, we were saying 1, 2, 3. But hang on a minute. 1, 2, 3. They're whole numbers, aren't they? But we're not talking about whole numbers. We're talking about those teeny weeny little numbers, the little tenths, that make the whole numbers. So we can't call them the same names. We call them decimals. And do you remember that little point that we were talking about earlier? I said it looked a little bit like a full stop. We actually call it a decimal point in maths. This first little red line is 0.1 because there's the 0 and it's one little tenth. The next one, I'll write it up here so we don't get crowded on the whiteboard, is 0.2. There's the 0 and then I've got 2 little red lines. The next one is going to be 0.3. There's my 0 and I've counted 1, 2, 3 tenths. I think you can probably work out what the one afterwards is going to be, can't you, children? If that's 0.3, the next one here is going to be 0.4. And can you see the next one? I have done it a little bit longer, and that's just to point it out to you because this is quite an important decimal. The next one is 0.5. 0.5 is the kind of number, the kind of decimal that you should always know and remember as being half. It is a half. It is 5 out of How many were there? How many tenths were there? I mean, the clue is in the word tenths. Do you remember? We went up to 10, didn't we? So there are 5 tenths, which is a half. So that was just one that I'm just throwing in there because it's quite a useful one to remember, just to note in your mind. And we can carry on going up our number line until we go all the way up to 0.9. And then, children, we would have 1 whole. We wouldn't necessarily call it 0.10. We would just go straight to 1 whole after the 0.9. Now, I want to have a little talk to you now about the relationship between decimals and fractions, because that is something really, really important as well. Okay, so quick recap. 100, tens, ones, tenths. They're the teeny weeny ones that become even before the ones. So let's just think about this a moment. There were 10 tenths made 1 whole. That was the fraction, okay? So we know that 10 of these little tenths here make 1 whole, because we just looked at that on the diagram, didn't we, children? So let's just think again, I'll rub this out, about the decimals and the fractions, because decimals and fractions are best friends. You know, like how we say adding and taking away are best friends, and we say multiplying and dividing are best friends. Well, fractions and decimals are best friends too. Maths is a very nice topic because everybody's friends in it. So let's have a little think a moment. If I had 1 tenth as my fraction, that means I have got 1 tenth. And I would write that as 0.1. 1 tenth is 0.1, which means, children, 2 tenths is 0.2. So that means 3 tenths is 0.3. It's quite easy once you get the hang of it, isn't it, children? So what is 4 tenths as a decimal? It's going to be 0.4. Amazing, super duper easy, isn't it? So I'm going to jump ahead now. I'm going to go to 9 tenths. So someone said in maybe a word problem, there are some, we've got 9 tenths. What is 9 tenths as a decimal? Well, it's easy. It's 0.9. So 0.9 is a teeny weeny number. It comes even before the number 1, and that is what decimals help us to identify all the teeny weeny little tenths that go in between numbers. So now you're getting the hang of this. I'm just going to put something up on the screen, a little task for you to do, where you basically have to look at the fractions and turn them into a decimal, and then also look at the decimals and turn them into a fraction. But you must remember to press pause on your screen, otherwise you're not going to have enough time to complete the work. So whiz through that, then when you're ready, press play again, and I'm going to make this a teeny weeny bit harder. All right? Did you find that okay? It's quite good just to do a little bit of a task there right at the beginning, just to make sure that decimal information is soaking in. And also just so you can see straight away the relationship, the best friends between decimals and fractions, which is really good. So I just want to quickly recap something. Are you ready? So I've got here my hundreds, tens, ones, or some schools call them units, and tenths. What number am I writing down now, children? What does that say? Easy peasy. 472. I'm going to add a decimal to it. Do you remember this little dot here? We call it a decimal point, and that tells us when we're going to start writing and thinking about the teeny weeny numbers which make up a whole number. So I'm going to do 472.8. All right. So let's just break something down, just so we can be really clear about something. This 4 is in the hundredths column. It represents 400. This 7 is in the tens column. It represents the number 70, doesn't it? This 2 is in the ones column. It represents the number 2. And this 8 is in the tenths column. So it represents 0.8. It represents 8 tenths. So this represents a 400, this represents a 70, this represents a 2, and this represents a 0.8 because it is in the tenths column. I'm going multicoloured now. I'm using all my different pens just for fun because we are the party classroom. We like lots of multicolour, don't we? We have 6.2, 6 ones and 2 tenths. So we've got 6 wholes because 6 is a whole number. So if this was a fraction, we would say 6 wholes, and can you see there are 2 tenths? I know there are 2 tenths because this is in the tenths column. Hey, I wonder what the next one's going to be. 7.9. How many whole numbers is that? If you look at the example above, 6.2, the 6 is the whole number. So in 7.9, what's the whole number? It's going to be the 7 because that is in the ones column. And then I'm going to think about the tenths. I started to write a decimal there. That was silly. We're doing the fraction, aren't we? So I've got 7 wholes and 9 tenths. There's my tenth, 9 tenths. Let's look at the orange. 12.4. So if I look at my 12, that is the whole number. So I've got 12 wholes. And how many tenths do I have, children? That's right, 4. I've got 4 tenths. Because that 4 is in the tenths column. Okay, so this is very similar to what we were just doing before, isn't it? Except I've used some bigger numbers. I've used some whole numbers. So as we kind of move on through this topic, it's really, really important that you remember in between numbers, we have something called tenths. They come after we go hundreds, tens, ones, and then they are the number that come next. We call them tenths. Teeny weeny bits that make up a whole number. Okay, so I'm going to put a little task on the screen now with some slightly larger numbers, and I want you to write the decimals as fractions and the fractions as decimals. But remember, you must press pause on the screen so it doesn't rush through it before you've done your work. Okay, let's have a little go at that, and then I'm going to move you on one last time before the end of our lesson today. So we only have one last little thing I would like us to do, children, before we finish today. We can have a little dance in the party classroom. And that is something similar to what we were just doing in this section before, all about partitioning numbers. So, bing! I have got here the number 621.7. I have not written the hundreds, tens, ones, or tenths, because I think now you can probably do that without it being written down. I think you know the place value. And I want us to think really carefully about what each number represents. So you see the number 6. What does it really mean? It doesn't really mean just the number 6 on its own. It means, I'm going to draw a little arrow down, it means 600, doesn't it? And you know that already because you're super smart and doing so well, aren't you? What does the number 2 represent? It's not really just a number 2. Think about its place value and which column it is in. And just so I don't run out of room on my whiteboard, I'm going to draw a little arrow up. But when you do yours and you have a go on your own, you can put it wherever you like. That 2 is a funny looking arrow. That 2 represents 20. What does this 1 represent here? That's a nice easy one. It just represents 1. Because it is in the ones column. And then what does this 7 represent? I'm drawing this all over the place. I'm sure you understand though. I hope you don't mind. What does the 7 represent? It's in the tenths column, isn't it? It represents 0.7. It's not a 7 whole, it's not a 70, it's not a 700. It is a teeny weeny number, 0.7. So children, I'm going to pop something up one last time on the screen. Remember to press pause so you can do it. Basically, it's just some numbers, and I want you just to, on a piece of paper, do something just like this, where you can put arrows out, do it however you like, from the numbers, saying what each one represents. Okay, now, I am so pleased with you today. You've worked really hard. We've got through this topic really nicely. So, oh, a big thumbs up. Where's my thumbs up? Ah, here it is. Oh, a big thumbs up from me. Woo! Well done, super duper. So I'm going to start my little dance in my disco party classroom now. Oh, I might put my hat on and get my, thank you, Mr. Cuddles, for looking after it for me. And I'd like you to do that little bit of work. Press pause, then remember to press play, and then you can join in a little bit of dancing with me to end the lesson. Well done. I'm really pleased with you. Goodbye from the party classroom, and I'll see you next time.